Good evening, everyone, and welcome to ESC. No, not an eye-opening special chat, or is it? It's the Extreme Scrutiny Club, and specifically an ESC Extra. This week, we are doing something a little bit different. We are celebrating RoboNerd, which sadly could not take place in person this year. I am joined, as ever, by my two regular hosts.
What up, it's me, it's Rara.
Hello, it's me, Mitch the Orc.
We are also debuting for the first time our new editor, Ned, to the podcast.
Hi, yes, I am the Dean Editor, as I have been touted. I don't know if this will be my first podcast. As we're recording this time-wise, this is my first go of it. Probably won't be for you, but we'll see.
And finally, we have been joined by a very special guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Oh, wow. I get to introduce myself. This is great. As you can tell, I am from England as well.
Absolutely.
The accent. I've kind of lost the accent a little bit over the years. My name is Chris Rose. I'm the host of Battlebots, which is shot over in the United States, but is aired around the world. And I've been fortunate to host the show with Kenny, Florian, and Farouk, and a varying list of sideline reporters as well, since it came back into carnation in 2015. And I'm just, I'm happy to be with you guys.
We're so excited to have you.
Are you really, Oliver, are you really excited, or did somebody cancel and so you just called me and you were like, God almighty, this Chris guy has been bothering us for years to come on our podcast. And finally, since we just had a guest cancel 7 minutes ago, I decided to call him in Los Angeles in the United States where he lives and say, Chris, if you can get by a computer, let's roll and do this. So here I am, Oliver.
You're our savior, Chris. We originally had Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for this. Last second. I have no idea why.
Oddly enough, this is not the first nor last time that The Rock has canceled on something, and I have been his stand-in.
I mean, you look so alike. So.
Yeah, we do. Well, I didn't want to embarrass him, so I'm going to keep my shirt on during the entire interview. It's really sad, you know. I think The Rock just turned 45 or 47 or something. I'm actually a tad bit older than that. Yeah, we're going to keep the shirt on. I don't want to, you know. Plus, I haven't been waxed in weeks, guys.
This is a shirts optional podcast.
Regular listeners of the podcast will be aware that we do have both Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Chris Rose on speed dial.
Yes.
Just such this occasion.
The most shocking part of that statement, Oliver, is that you have regular listeners of the podcast. So good for you guys. Well done.
Well, actually, we do have some regular listeners because over the past week, we've been putting one question to them. And that is, what would you guys like to ask Chris Rose?
Oh, my gosh.
And we've come up with a list of about 14, 15 or so questions of things that...
Some of which are rather short, luckily.
And so if it's cool with you, we're going to work through some of these and see what happens.
You know what? Whenever I do these things, I usually judge the questions on a scale of 1 to 10. So I'm going to judge the question askers as well. So let's do this.
No.
Given that we've randomized the questions between the question askers, this is...
I'm going to use this point to be like, don't pick on the woman in the podcast. Hello, please don't pick on me.
No, stop. That's no fun.
No, of course. So, Oliver, I think you're up first, right?
Okay, so the first question that we've got is, we would like to know, how did you get involved with Battlebots initially, and were you aware of fighting robots before you signed on?
Okay, it's a great story. So in 2015, in the United States here, particularly with what are called entertainment shows, they get everything in line, meaning the director, the producers, everybody who is responsible for putting the show together. And then usually the last thing they do is hire the on-air people, the people you will see in front of the camera.
Of course, yeah. The
So
talent, as it were.
Right, the talent, exactly. I don't like to call it talent because I think there are some people who are super, super talented whom you never see and are the reason that projects get off the ground. And then there are some bumbling idiots that are in front of the camera and are not talented. So I hate the word talent. I just want to go by that. So they were still looking for what's called a play-by-play presenter, I guess is how you guys would term it. And I had a friend that was trying out to be the female host, and we were represented by the same agent. And the agent was talking to the producers and they said, hey, listen, I've got a great play-by-play guy who can really help you out. They hadn't found anybody that they had loved. I went down to their production office. I met with them. I knew nothing about BattleBots when it was on in its previous incarnation on Comedy Central about the turn of the century. So I pulled some clips up on YouTube and I started watching it. And I remember my oldest son was about 14 years old. So he was getting ready to go into high school here in the United States, which is, kind of your formative years. This is where, as boys, they can kind of be mean to other boys and all that sort of stuff. So I start watching it, and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm up for this job on BattleBots." And he watched about 90 seconds of it, and he goes, "Huh, you are not doing that show." I said, "What do you mean I'm not doing this show?"
Hold on.
And he said, "Dad, I am going to get laughed out of school if you end up doing that show." I was like, "No, dude, it's not that bad. It looks fun. It's something different." He walked away. I ended up getting the gig. And I was very appreciative of it. We shot the first season. It was on network television presented by ABC, which is one of the major networks over here. And I remember walking into my son's room and he goes, "Dad, I am so happy that you did BattleBots." He goes, "Everybody thinks I'm so cool now."
Oh, brilliant.
I was like, "Yeah, that's
That is
one for
wholesome.
me.
That is so wholesome.
One for Dad, 0 for Josh." All right, keeping score.
You've actually kind of answered our next question of if you watched BattleBots back in 2002, but
Yeah.
Or 2000 even. But when you were watching those YouTube clips, did any particular fights stand out from the old age? Have any sort of stuck with you since?
You know what? It was interesting because it's such a jolt to the system. If you've never seen robot combat before, you're like, "What the hell am I watching?"
Yeah,
Very
it's a bit like
angry
that.
remote control cars.
Yeah, and
Very
is this legal? Like, are people going to be arrested for doing this? Are they in somebody's basement right now? Like, you're kind of confused what it is. So
Those are
there is
questions we still ask ourselves now, by the way.
Right. Well, it's not, you know what? It was totally this underground world until it was brought on national television. And I think to some degree, some of the builders liked the privacy that it brought and the anonymity, if you will. But because they were very concerned when we took over that we would present it in a totally different light. And I actually think we did, but we did it in a real positive way. Back then, when it was on Comedy Central, by the name of the network, which if your listeners are not familiar with Comedy Central, it is just exactly the way it sounds. It is a network that is built around a comedic tone of a show. So you're not going to have any serious programming. Everything has to be jokey, and that's the way that they make their money. Well, on ABC, they wanted a totally different tone. They wanted us to care about the competitors. Who are these people? Are they family members? Did they have some sort of tragedy in their life that got them inspired to become bot builders? What was it? We needed to have people care about the contestants and the bot builders. So we kind of found a happy medium. We didn't think, Comedy Central did a great job with the show, but they never treated it like it was a sporting event. And the beauty of a sporting event is you never know the outcome, right?
Of course,
When
yeah.
we all watch reality TV or whatever, we know that it's really pre-produced television.
Very
With
much
what
so.
we were doing, you don't know how the script is going to end. You don't know when a bot is going to take a dump on the floor and not be able to leave its red or blue square. You don't know.
As a team member for Nelly the Ellibot last season was difficult for us.
It was, but wasn't it great when we saw those big googly eyes and within about 12 seconds, one of them was flying halfway across the battle box?
Actually, I have a related question there. So I asked my team captain, Sarah, of course, if she had anything she wanted to ask you. And she did say, "Do you remember your promise to buy Nelly new eyes?"
Yes, I do. You can tell Sarah I certainly do. And if there's a new season and Nelly the Ellibot is there, I have already put a financial request into the fine people that produce BattleBots. We are going to do LASIKs on Nelly the Ellibot. And so she won't need any bifocals or anything. She'll just have clear vision.
Beautiful. I'll pass it on to the captain. I'm sure she'll be pleased.
Please do. You tell her hello. I liked her spirit.
Mitch, your turn.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. So my next question, Chris, is sadly the 2020 season's been delayed for the foreseeable future. But if you saw any of the robots that were going to compete Were there any you were excited to see?
Well,
Apart
unfortunately,
from
we don't.
Nelly.
Yeah, well, of course. I love seeing old bots that maybe haven't done as well in the past, have made some adjustments, have learned, because as much fun as it is, there is a huge learning curve. Like very rarely are you going to see a new bot kind of come out of nowhere without having earned their stripes in a competition and know what the hell to do, you know? So I like it when a team like Rotator, who struggled a few seasons ago, but came back last year and was really one of the top 10 or 12 bots, makes an improvement. They were determined to be better in certain areas. I love that. I love that sort of stuff.
Or the Hypershock knowledge of, not suck or suck less.
Yes, to suck less. That was very good. I mean, in 2018, they really sucked. And Will Bales is one of our favorite builders out there. He's got so much energy and charisma and charm, and he's also the last one to show up to class. Like as the teacher is shutting the door to start class, he like sticks his hand right in there, says, "Hey, here I am. Don't forget about me," because he's always working on things to the last minute. There was a bot like Death Roll from Australia, which had joined us a few seasons ago and was kind of this long, slowish, sort of crocodile-looking bot. And it came back not only physically looking different, but the team had kind of pared itself down. There was new leadership in place. I think Stephen Martin was his name. Great afro, by the way. He had it really kick
Amazing afro,
just
right?
an amazing hair. And they were, what was it, a top 4 bot?
To Mitch's utter delight,
Yep.
it is his favorite robot.
Mitch, is that true?
Yes, it's very true. I love Death Roll.
What do you love about Death Roll?
I like animal-type robots, animals with character, creativity, and Death Roll, like you said, it was that kind of big evolution of going from something that didn't perform too well to being top 4. That was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that was great. So there's just, I think it's the bot builders that understand that, they all want to win. They all want to do well, but so many of them just want to put on a good show. And when you
it's
understand,
our entire purpose. Like with Nelly, our entire build prophecy, like our entire build philosophy, is go out there, have fun. If we win, cool.
Yeah, well, I remember Sarah in our meeting, we meet with all the bot builders individually before the tournament starts, just to kind of see where their headspace is and what their thought process is. And she basically said, "We're not going to win. We know that. We're just here to have the best time ever." And I was like, "Oh my!"
That
was
is
that
the
a bad
best Sarah impression
That
I
was
have ever
really
heard.
good.
That was actually good.
Kind of follow up from that question then, Chris. Is there any robots that you've seen in the last season that's just that's been filmed and aired last year that you think might have the potential to level up going into this year? Maybe they had a bad season, or you think the design has potential?
That's a really good question. I expected a little bit more. Bronco, I don't know what happened to them last year. They're one of the OGs of this sport, if you will, the great flipping bot. And
they had a very rough season.
If you call 0-4 rough and then leaving before the playoffs even started, those guys were in their van driving back up to Northern California before I could even say thank you for coming.
And Hydra kind of showed up and showed up as well.
Yes, no question. And that was their goal. Let's remember that's a family that, of course, has part of its claim to fame with Son of Waiachi. And when they were all about, hey, listen, what Son of Waiachi can do. Yeah. Keep your eye on Hydra, because Hydra we guarantee we're a better flipper bot than Bronco. We were like, hey, slow your roll there, partner. That's Bronco you're talking about.
I mean, it means that we're all terrified of Fusion for this year.
Oh, yeah? Fusion
is their new bot, and it has 2 weapons, because, what could they do that they haven't done before? So it has 2 spinners on it.
I love it. Yeah, it's great, because there is, as much as they do want to put on a show, there's also ego involved. We all want to do great. And it's fun to be the king of the mountain. You don't think of Ray Billings loves walking around there knowing that 30 of those bots in a room full of 60 robots are scared the bejesus out of him.
I mean, everyone has a tombstone plan.
Right.
When people have a plan named after your bot.
Right. That's pretty good.
Okay, so the next question we have: were you approached by Discovery to reprise your role after the hiatus? And how did you react when you were told the BattleBots would actually be returning after after it all?
That's a good question, Ed. So we were on ABC for 2015 and a more substantial role in 2016. And then the show got put on the shelf for a year, and basically that means it doesn't mean that they don't love you. It just means that for a year they're going to see what happens. And then Discovery and Science Channel, who are two cable television networks here that are kind of joined at the hip, they're owned by the same group, decided to bring it back in 2018. And when I tell you, I was super excited after sitting on the sidelines for 2017 to come back and do it. That is no lie. I'm very fortunate. For people that aren't familiar with me, this is not my main job. My main job, I work for the Major League Baseball network.
That's some intentional talk, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So during the baseball season, and even when it's not going on, I'm working every day, Monday through Friday. I also work for the NFL network. I do about...
I was familiar with your NFL work. So.
Thank you. Thank you. I have about 35 or 40 days a year with them. So I start when the season starts in September, and I work all the way through the NFL draft and do about 40 days total. So this is my third job. But when I tell you that it is as enjoyable as almost anything I've ever done, I'm not lying to you. I love the group of people that I work with from the television standpoint. Our producers are brilliant minds who work their asses off. I mean, down to the nub. We have amazing writers, the technical people that put this thing together and make it look as good and as grand as it does on television. Unbelievable. And I equate it to summer camp. Like, I don't know how big a thing summer camp is where you guys live, but for us, when I grew up, I always went away to summer camp as a kid. And this, to me, this is 2 weeks of summer camp. And it is the best time because I love seeing the bot builders. I think they're appreciative of the tone that we have set on the show. And hopefully we've helped kind of grow the idea of what robot fighting is all about.
Absolutely. And I mean, the engineering part of it as well, because as much as Battlebots is amazingly good fun, the fact that it promotes STEM education, and specifically for myself as well, it promotes STEM education for females, which is somewhat of a new era at the moment that we're going through. And it's fantastic to see the amount of representation there is on Battlebots.
I think it's a great call that you're talking about. It's so important because being a big sports guy, obviously athletics is huge. I've got a son that's in 8th grade still, and he plays 3 sports, but he loves BattleBots. So he's not just a jock. He loves BattleBots. And when he was younger, I started this when he was about 9 or 10 or so. I'd come home from work. He'd be like, "Tell me who fought." And I'd say, "Really?" He goes, No. I want to wait until I see it on TV. And then the next morning he'd wake up, he'd go, "Can you tell me, did Scorpios win?" And I'd be like, "I'm not going to tell you, dude." But there are so many great engineering programs opening up at the high school level and even earlier than that. And I think it's so important.
I mean, FIRST Robotics has become a huge part of this sport. And I mean, there was a documentary recently about it as well, about how many of the popular faces in modern BattleBots actually brought their way up through that program.
Totally.
And it's fantastic. And as much as the UK doesn't have anything similar, we also have people who are around my generation who grew up as a kid watching Robot Wars. And again, it had that era of being more of a comedy show, and then it had a reboot where it was a bit more hardcore and serious. Unfortunately, Robot Wars is no longer with us, but we do still have BattleBots. And that's why so many UK builders are hopping the pond all the time.
Well, we love it. We love having the diversity of the entire world. It wouldn't be nearly the event that it is if it was just the bot builders from the United States for the most part. And we love it that last year we had Brazil, we had the Netherlands, we had 2 bots from China, all that. And so I think it's so important to have the entire globe represented, because I think the ingenuity you get, the character, personality, the drive, everything, it's just so much fun.
Did you have any sort of favorite anecdotes from being on BattleBots? Did you have any sort of stories from behind the scenes that you sort of hold dear?
There was the one fight where Tombstone had been knocked out in the 2018 season in the first round of the playoffs by, I believe, Bombshell, who had gotten in
Bombshell.
as a wild 16 seed, even though they went winless during the regular season. I'm not so sure how that happened, but I'm not part of the decision-making process. So anyway, we're always looking for extra fights to kind of fill time and captivate the in-studio audience that we would have and things of that nature. He ended up going against, oh my gosh, forget the name of the robot. The one with the two fists that were sticking out to the sides. Tantrum, thank you. Aaron Hill and Tantrum. And this is what happens when you get old, guys. It'll happen to you too. You forget stuff. And then, he had these two hands that aren't real heavy metal. They're kind of light, but he just wanted to chop. Ray Billington and Tombstone just wanted to chop those hands off. He told us, I want to chop one off and then I want to chop another off. And Kenny and I are sitting on kind of the corner of the box together, and we hear him hit the hand, and we were trying to find where'd this thing go. It had stuck in the pole inside the battle box like it was something that was filmed out of a movie. The odds of it happening, I'm not smart enough mathematically to figure it out, but oddly enough, somebody tweeted me the other day that I actually figured out the odds of this happening were 1.23 trillion to 1, and here's how I came up with it. I was like, dude, I'll take your word for it. Whatever. I'm good. But
it's definitely the unpredictability of robot combat that makes it so entertaining.
Absolutely. I mean, we had one robot, and I forget what it was, but it was a fight that I don't even remember if it aired. It was so bad. One of the robots, it was one of those that just couldn't even make it out of its own square. And Kenny and I were laughing hysterically throughout the whole fight. It was one of the few times where we were actually making fun of the robot. We were
that sounds a lot like our fight with Rainbow. So
yes. Yeah, it does a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, Rainbow took it to you. Don't worry. Those eyes will be...
We donked him once, I think.
Yes. Maybe.
I wish I'd been there for that one as well, because I'm not actually English by descent. I'm from Ukraine originally, and being able to donkey a Russian bot would be
well, I don't want to start rivalries. I don't want to start any border wars here.
I think they've already been started. I don't think you need to worry about that.
Yeah. We got enough problems going on in the globe.
Exactly.
That's true.
So the next question's kind of maybe it's a difficult one to answer. I feel like the guy who was asking it had an idea in mind as to where he was going with it, which I will briefly lay out, but you can answer it however you like. There are certain groups of fans in the UK and in the US who get maybe a little frustrated at one type of robot dominating the sport. So for Battlebots, it's four-wheel drive vertical spinners. Over here in the UK, it's triangular pyramid-shaped flippers. But the question that's been asked is, what direction do you think the sport should move in to provide maximum entertainment value?
It's a good question, right? One thing that we've really been about, and certainly the people, Greg and Trey, who are the creators of BattleBots, and, are much more in tune with the science of the sport than I am, because I don't even know what I did with a Bunsen burner when I was in 7th grade in science class. I'm just not that good at that stuff.
Set things on fire, I'd imagine.
I mean, I did that a few times with a Bunsen burner. It happens.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought I was the only one. Thank God there's a community here where we can all come together and grieve about our Bunsen burner experiences.
I think there's another entire podcast in that, Chris.
Yeah, well, count me out of that one then. Thank you. So, they've always harped upon the point, and you'll hear it during our commentary, that you have to have an active weapon. You have to. You just can't be, as much as I love Hal Rucker and Duck, you got to have something. And, you can't just be a big brick that's running around town. Now, as far as, those vertical spinners, listen, this is part of the strategy. How do we beat Paul Ventimiglia's robot? How do we come up with a game plan? And that's part of it too. I mean, in sports, who's the most dominant soccer team you guys have right now in the UK? Is there one that's gone on a run in recent years?
To be fair, I don't
think anyone here is a soccer fan.
Perfect.
I follow Major League Soccer. I follow the MLS, but
okay. Well, good job, Chris Rose. Way to know your audience. Anyway, my point is, if in sports there's a team that has a dynasty going, do we all of a sudden shut things down and say, yeah, this doesn't seem fair. This team's won 3 championships in a row. Why don't we change things up a little bit? Well, no, it's incumbent on the rest of the sporting community to get better and to
It's
figure out
adapt
a
or
way.
die, right? It's adapt or die.
And
that's kind of the nature of sports in a way, though, isn't it? There's so many sports where that's the case, where just maybe like one or two players just dominate the entire game.
Well, yes. So in our case, let's circle it back to BattleBot with Paul Ventimiglia and Bite Force, who's won the last 2 titles and 3 of 4 since we brought it back. Paul's a great guy, and he knows that people are gunning for him. Now, this year, let's hope we get 2020 back and rolling at some point. People are going to be going after him. You know,
He's
it's
got
no
the
longer
biggest target on his back in the entire sport.
And it's only
and
getting
he
bigger.
Yeah.
He should. And it's no longer like after our first season or two, it was all about, oh my God, how do we take care of Tombstone? How do we do that?
Yeah.
Well, if you're playing that game, you're not playing to win. I mean, right? Because
Absolutely.
who's the champ? Who's the king of the hill? It's Paul Ventimiglia and Bite Force. So you got to figure out a way. And there's been teams that have been close.
I mean, Witch Doctor was so close
Totally.
this year.
They did a great.
And I certainly think when Huge fought them back in the 2018 season, if the robot had been better shape and hadn't been split apart by Ice Wave, they've got the perfect weapon to sort of rain down hits from above, which is not something that Bite Force has got a good defense for at the moment.
No.
And I mean, it also puts a lot more extra, and this is an interesting thing that I don't know whether it actually really happens in other sports, but it puts a lot of extra effort and target onto Chomp being the only robot to beat it in however long now.
Yeah, I mean, I guarantee you that there's people that have game plans, but having a great game plan, you know, as Mike Tyson once said, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, what would your game plan be, Chris?
I would,
if you were to design a BattleBot, what would you go for?
That question gets a -7 right there.
No.
No, I'm not a bot designer. I can barely tie my own shoes. I'm 49 years old. I still buy Velcro shoes. I just can't do this stuff. I'm not talented. I'm not athletic.
Yeah, that's fair.
So there you go. I'll call the fights. I like doing that. Where I equally suck at that too.
No, not at all. I mean, your commentary has been one of the iconic bits, the play-by-play from you and then the color from Kenny, and it's just got this real good vibe going.
Thank you.
I mean, there's so many iconic lines. I mean, if we don't hear Huge hit there, Kenny, in an episode, we get disappointed, you know.
That's true. It's a great drinking game.
Yes.
We'll be picking you up off the floor after that one.
Speaking of commentary, like, how do you find live commentary? You know, what are the challenges and benefits of doing it compared to commentating over recordings of fights?
Okay, well, truth be told, we do this where you see us there. We are sitting box side, so we are calling the fight as is. Now, sometimes there are mechanical issues that happen with the robots that we don't know are happening. The builders don't even know that they're happening as it's all unfolding. So when they go back and they find out that a wire was cut or something like that, something happened on a particular hit that knocked a battery loose or something like that, and they can kind of do that in the robot autopsy, if you will. We might drop in an extra line in what's called a voiceover session later on. But you have to know as a viewer, 90 to 95% of what you hear on a given show is done from our live cut. And that's really important for us to keep the energy that you see and feel. All that is really important for us. Now, it is a little bit different than I've had the good fortune of calling NFL games at stadiums, calling Major League Baseball games at stadiums.
Yeah.
There's no covering that up.
No, absolutely not.
You make a mistake, it's there forever. And I've had calls where I've screwed things up so royally, like I was like, oh God, I cannot believe I did that. And it lives forever, but that's part of the gig here.
That's fair. As we're on the subject of commentary, have you ever blown your voice out during a fight with all the high impact?
So that's a good question. Usually, so here's what we do. Last season we had 9 shoot days. We would go 3 days, then a day off where the bot builders can have a day to kind of regroup, then 3 more on, then a day off, then 3 more. We shot 178 fights in 9 days. And, this is not like calling golf where you're like, and there is Tiger Woods at the par 3-4.
Although I would love to hear BattleBots with golf commentary.
Right? I mean, we might have to bust that out just for fun, And so what I'm saying is that you have energy for 3 minutes and you are screaming at at the top of your lungs and you're having the time of your life. And usually by day 3 of a set, I'm finished. Like I am pounding tea and honey like I'm going to the electric chair. And I got to get my fill in.
That was actually one of our other questions we had as well. What's your sort of voice routine? What's your sort of mantra for looking after it? I mean, I've done professional voice acting in the past, and, you know, it's quite difficult sometimes when you go, you know, absolutely hours of using your voice at the top of its level and going, I don't know how I'm going to speak for the next 3 days.
It's a challenge. There's no question about it. Like usually Farouk's the first to go because he's got that amazing tone. And he pours every ounce of energy into those reads that he does. And they're so good. And he memorizes them all. And he crushes every single one. And he gets into character. So Farouk, he's fortunate. He's a voice guy too.
His voice is godly.
Yeah, it's great. And, you know, he provides so much to the show. It's just, I love it. He's a good dude. He always writes us great little inspirational notes at the beginning of our show every year. And he's just a good-hearted person that happens to be damn good at what he does, too.
I'm certainly glad that you guys do look after your voices the way that you do, because there's a couple of times over here when Robot Wars was on, where it got pushed back for a couple of weeks. It got rescheduled because of live golf tournaments and live tennis tournaments. So we definitely prefer the more active sort of style of commentary, given that we've been subjected to the sport sometimes when we've been wanting our robot fights.
Yeah, I understand it. And I love it. Like I used to coach my youngest son's little league baseball team. And when we first started to do this, it was like right in the middle of our season. So they were all asking, hey, is anybody going to be Tombstone? I'm like, guys, I can't tell you this stuff. Go out the shortstop, Johnny. Stop picking your nose when I hit you the ball too. Clean it up.
Give him an automatic strike 1 just for asking about Tombstone.
Exactly.
Okay, so next question I have is, I mentioned this a bit earlier, but I guess this is more in detail. How much are you and Kenny told about a field of competitors before each season?
Well, we have a really good research staff, and we get this huge binder that has details on all of the previous seasons, results, and then we get like a 1-page research sheet on each competitor, name of the competitor, where they're from, what they do in addition to building bots, how they got interested. And it's a filled out questionnaire, you know, for those that are returning. And usually maybe there's 30% new bots in a season. You really have to kind of familiarize yourself. The rest of the people, it's just kind of a reintroduction, if you will. As I said, we have these meetings before the tournament starts where we get to pick the brains of the bot builders. We bring them in about 1 at a time every 10 minutes or so. And we just kind of catch up on where they are in life. Is there anything new that would help tell their story a little bit? You know, their goals for the season. And we try and throw those little anecdotal bits into our commentary. So it's important stuff to be able to.
Pays off. Again, to compare it to Robot Wars again over here, the commentator Jonathan Pierce he's got some very infamous flubs that are known in the community for, you know, forgetting which robot did how well in the previous season. Totally understandable, but having the research there definitely helps from the perspective of a fan.
No. I mean, and that's when I'm telling you, it is a monumental team effort. We don't just roll in there like, okay, what do you got, guys? Like we are in constant contact. You know, our showrunner is an Aussie named Aaron Catling, and he really is the genius behind this. He has come up with these tournament formats, the selection committee. He does such a good job of making this a fun event. I mean, not everybody's happy with where they're seated, or sometimes they feel like they got screwed. That's the way it is, you know?
I mean, there's some infamous stories that the fans have heard on that end. I mean, about the whole Captain Shredderator asking to not fight someone from last season is iconic.
Yep. You know, you need to tell stories, but you also have to respect people as well. And
absolutely.
You won't ever hear out of my mouth or Kenny at any point anything that's personal. We don't ever.
And it's actually quite nice as well because, you know, there's been some wonderful moments that you've been able to highlight, and you've been able to highlight, you know, things such as, you know, meteoric rises of people who've never built a bot before or never even touched a spanner before, let alone anything else.
I love those stories.
To these people like Spectre and, you know, Cobalt, who are part of the 3 Continents Club and who've done everything.
Yep. That's the beauty of this. You know,
you get to tell the stories as well as tell the fight.
And I love the fact, I want to be doing this for 15 or 20 years. I really think it's a show that can survive because of the grassroots that we're building with so many young kids. And Paul Ventimiglia is a guy who benefited from that. He won a big opportunity when he was 14, and that got him going. But I can't wait for the day when we are giving the giant nut to some kid who's now a grown up and said, I never had an interest in this until I tuned into BattleBots in 2020 and watched it. That's when you helped. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about
the whole thing.
The BattleBots community change somebody's life. I think that's pretty cool.
And we have so many people in the community like that now as well. And there's some really cool bots coming to hopefully quote unquote 2020 that are first time bots. One of which was highlighted by the BattleBots social media pages recently was War Easy. They're a first-time competitor. They've never done anything like this before, and that's really cool. I mean, I only started building robots about 2 or 3 years ago. I've been a fan of the show since I was a little girl, but I only actually built my first tiny little 1.5 kilo beetle weight 2 years ago now. And now look at me. I'm running with the big leagues and going out there and fighting the big robot. It's mad.
Now you're on a podcast with some loser from the United States. It's perfect. See where you're going?
Hey, that's not a nice way to talk about Oliver, and he's not from the United States.
That's a good point. I'm just jealous of Oliver because he's got the most kick-ass hair of anybody on this show. So,
I've not even got my camera on, so you don't know.
Okay, and so BattleBots does have some very unique designs and stuff, but which one would you say sort of like shocked you or wowed you the most when you saw it?
Well, last year I was surprised by Mammoth, because I saw this thing. First I didn't see it until I had met Ricky, who's the designer of this, and I loved. He's got one of those stories. He said, "I would never have thought about building a bot until I came and saw it in person the previous season in 2018." He was like, "I'm going to build something that nobody's ever seen." And we saw this thing, and I was like, "How the heck's this thing going to work?" And we saw it, and I was like, "Okay, it's not going to win a ton. It won some matches, but it's different, and I'm good with that. I'm good with trying that out." So that one was pretty neat.
Nelly and Mammoth still need to have the battle of the pachyderms. So,
well, we'll see. I'll place a call and see what we can do about that.
Definitely. So you do a lot with Kenny Florian whilst on the show, and I imagine working with him is quite different to any of the commentary you've done before. What with Kenny actually being a sports person, having moved into the thing, and as much as that's becoming much more of a thing within sports commentating. However, we did have one interesting fan question about you and Kenny that came in, which is if you and Kenny got the chance to fight in the arena, you get to pick a bot each. Which bot do you choose, and do you win?
Well, as long as it's the bots fighting in the arena and not Rose against Florian.
You don't think you'd win that one, or you'd have to take it easy, Well,
the good news is my life insurance is paid up, so I'm on. We're good there. Boy, oh boy. You know what? I might go to an old UK favorite. I missed Beta last year a lot.
Yeah. Okay, good choice.
I really missed Beta because it looks rather simple, right? It's just kind of a hammer bot with this huge head that kind of dumps. And it's not sleek. It's kind of all over the place. Kind of like me with my dad bod. I'm kind of sloppy. I don't look like I could do some damage, but you better watch out because these things these are tough.
You'd be pleased to hear that they're making a comeback this season.
I know.
Everything is to be believed.
I know. I'm big on that. I want it to happen. I'm rooting for it. So I think I would probably go with Beta. When you get Kenny on the podcast, you can ask him who he might go for.
We'll have to get Kenny on the podcast and ask him if he wins.
Oh, I'm going to let him win. Let's be very clear about this. Let's be very clear about this. Kenny Florian is a very dear friend of mine. In addition to just gravitating toward him because I like him as a person and he's super smart and he's funny, he could literally kill me by just looking at me. So if there's anything when we sit down for our lunch break, usually he looks at me and he says, "You know what? Give me half your lunch." Here you go, Kenny. No problem. Just take it.
Shakes you down for lunch money?
It's fine. It's not a big. It was only during the middle part of that session last year, just the middle third. It was.
I can't believe Kenny Florian shook you
It was
down
not
for
a big
lunch
deal.
money.
It was not a
How
big deal.
mean.
What he forgot was that there was so much extra that I just went back up and then I took it to my trailer anyway. So it didn't really do its job. I just said, here you go, Mr. Florian. Here, you take this.
Okay, so we've got 2 more questions left. One of them is very on topic for what we've just been talking about. So with the whole coronavirus thing that's been going on, we've all been in lockdown and unable to leave our houses. So out of the current presenters of BattleBots, so that's Kenny, Farouk, and Jenny, which one would you rather spend lockdown with, and what would you do together?
Stop. All right.
You
now,
said no questions were off limits, so we're asking.
That is
this
true.
one.
That is a well, Jenny's like my kid's sister. First of all, we're represented by the same agency, and she is as nice as she seems on television. She is a gazillion times nicer. She is from a place called Minneapolis, Minnesota, and for people that aren't familiar with kind of the geography of the United States, your listeners, it's right in the middle of the country, all the way up north. It's like right next to Canada. They have the nicest people up there. I was fortunate enough to spend a ton of time in Minneapolis over the years, and they are just good-hearted people. She doesn't stop smiling. I'm like, do you go kick a dog or something when you get home? What do you do? Because like you're so nice. Like, what is it? Give me something. So I could easily live with her just because she's big into yoga. I used to do yoga, so maybe she could get me back into that. I would probably end up living with Farouk, though, because I spend so much time with Kenny. I'd probably like to live with Farouk. He's a big Phillies sports fan, Philadelphia. So he loves the Philadelphia Phillies and the Philadelphia Eagles, most definitely Philadelphia 76ers and those teams. So we have a big sports connection, he and I. Plus, I'm not a great sleeper, but I used to have a college roommate who had a beautiful voice. And I used to have him just tell me stories to make me go to sleep. So I'd be like, John, he goes, well, what story do you want me to say? I said, just talk. And I would be asleep in 3 minutes.
I won't lie. I am now picturing you tucked up in bed asking Farouk
Yes.
to tell you a bedtime story.
I mean, absolutely. Is that okay if I bring my teddy bear and my binky and a blankie too?
I think
I could
bedtime
have
story with Farouk is something we would all like to hear.
I mean, who hasn't looked into that?
Yeah, I mean, true. In fact, you know what? That actually brings back the one of our last questions we had is the cold opens that you had up until last year. Like that could definitely make a good cold open if you guys ever brought those back. But how much fun were they to record? And did you have any sort of point to take in making them happen?
I like them. I think the writers did a really, really good job. They're not easy to pull off. I think the reason we ditched them really had nothing to do with that they weren't funny enough. I mean, if you were to do, let's say 20 over a season, if you hit on like 11 or 12, that's a great percentage because as we all know, comedy is very difficult. And I thought that the writers did a great job. I think the reason we got rid of them though, was just, they wanted us all to focus on things a little bit more important to the show. The tempo of the show.
To slip some comedy in. I mean, the birthday cake scene this year.
Well, you have to remember that it's built-in comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, let's be honest, it's 250-pound robots fighting each other inside of a bulletproof glass cube.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, who thought of this? And so it's naturally funny. So you don't have to zing one-liners in there all the time. But if you can find a bit with the cupcake last year.
Yeah, the cupcake was beautiful.
Yeah, that played really, really well. And
was it a good cupcake? That's the question.
Listen, has there ever been a bad cupcake?
I've had a bad cupcake in my time. I mean, I made it,
Not
so
me.
I'm the person to blame. So.
Well, then don't send any here. I want to keep my streak of batting 1,000 on the cupcake taster scale alive.
We do have one final question then. You've told us that you seem to be somewhat involved in things, but you're not necessarily told everything about the show as it happened. But what do you know? Do you know anything about the future of BattleBots that you can tell us? Will the beard be staying for next season, for instance?
So it's interesting. I've been broadcasting in front of the camera since 1995, and I've always been clean shaven. But obviously, this pandemic struck, and I wasn't going to be on TV for the foreseeable future. And my wife was like, "Why don't you grow it out? Just see what it looks like." And I started to grow it out, and we've been married almost 23 years. It'll be 23 years in September. And I don't know if any of you guys are married, but when your wife starts looking at you like you're not a jackass, you do whatever you can. You know, if she's not looking at you like you're totally disgusting, and she's got a little twinkle in her eye, you keep the beard.
Yeah.
So I will make that argument to the powers that be at BattleBots and say, guys,
I'm sure if we ask Greg nice enough, he'll let you keep the beard. I mean, he's a beard haver himself,
listen,
you know.
Yeah, listen, all those guys understand. They've all been married a long time. They're going to be like, Chris, keep it, bro. Go for it. So I splurged and got myself a beard trimmer. I have
got to be done
some high-end beard dye, and because it will be very gray. I don't want that to happen, so I want to have it kind of nice and darkish. But we'll see. I'm hopeful. And don't tell Kenny, this beard kicks his beard's ass. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. No, we're on your side there, Chris. We're on your side.
As the resident beard haver of the group, I can confirm that's true.
Thank you. So I'm curious, Ned. Are you finding snacks in there from 2017? Because you've got quite the manly growth going right now.
I do sometimes find things in here which I shouldn't be finding. Yeah, that does happen sometimes.
That's incriminating. Oh, look, the Declaration of Independence. I wonder where that's gone to.
Yeah. Believe me, if you put the Declaration of Independence in there, that's the least of the things that could cause you trouble. You could find other things in there.
Yeah, I'd just go down to Buckingham Palace and just like steal the entire crown jewels and just hide them in here.
Perfect. Let's roll.
But no, I know. I try to sort of keep it as clean as possible. A lot of food just gets trapped in here naturally. It happens. But I don't know.
I don't have to have this problem. I'm just sat here in awe of all you men with your beards. And
I mean, I'm not going to lie. This was literally just me being too lazy to shave. But then
that's
it
like
really
1 week's growth. Yeah.
But then it really started to grow on me. So yeah.
Hey, and Oliver, I just want to tell you, when you hit puberty, it'll happen to you too. Don't worry, it'll happen.
I mean, thank you so much for entertaining our child today, Chris. It's been so wonderful. And actually, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure having you on.
Yeah,
and as we said at the start, if
fun.
there is anything that you wanted to plug or anywhere that people can find you, especially during the pandemic, while BattleBots reruns are great, of course, we've heard you say that before. Where can people find new Chris Rose things?
Well, you can always follow me if you have Twitter, at Chris Rose. I know it's a real original name. And if you have Instagram, crose127, that's where you might be able to find some of the baseball stuff that I'm doing these days. And then hopefully, if everything is safe, which is the most important stuff, we'll be back working soon. Okay.
Fantastic.
Cool. Yes. Brilliant.
Thank you so much for being on, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys adjusting to a different video modicum. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Everybody stay safe. And Oliver, I was just kidding about the puberty thing. I expect you to be in full bloom by the summer.
Oh, I tried it last year, actually, and the sides didn't grow out well enough. So I do need to leave it a bit longer.
Okay. Got it.
Oh, dear.
Okay, I'll grow a beard on your behalf, Oliver. I'm sure if I find enough magic potions, I could try.
Okay, to wrap up the podcast then, Ned, since you're new here, would you like to start? Where can we find you? Anything you'd like to plug?
Okay, so my Instagram is @AllOfTheMan. I'm a mod on Shump Posting, so you can probably find me in there. I host like watch parties all the time. I'm not sure if that's still going to be happening by the time this podcast goes live, but there we go. So I've also got a channel called Spoiler Alert, which I which sometimes uploads videos. I'm also doing Rebuttal Wars. I'm not sure if that's going to be out by this point in time, but yeah, Rebuttals 1.5.
So over on the Good Rebuttal channel.
Yes, as we call it, Rebuttal Wars 1.5. We are officially recording tomorrow, as of recording, so that's going to be fun. Hopefully, at least some of that will be out by the time this goes live. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Okay, and Mitch, welcome back. Who knows where we'll be in the time of recording, but if people don't know, Mitch has decided to step away from the ESC podcast, but he's back.
Wait, I wasn't told about this. I wasn't told about this. But this is right.
Mitch has become. Remember, Mitch has become our Vince McMahon. He just walks in every now and again. He does that weird flappy arm walk. You know.
Where can people find you, Mitch?
It was me, Austin. It was me all along.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Where can we find you, Mitch?
Well, you can find me at Scribblork on Instagram, and you can find me
Insta when?
Fuck off. And you can find me at the Orc Corp on YouTube and Twitch.
And Herrera?
Oh, I don't exist in a corporeal form. You can't find me anywhere. No, so you can find me on Nelly, the Ellie bot. I do stuff for them. I am team tactician for the hopefully 2020 season, as we've just discussed with Chris. You can find me at my own team, Transcendent Robotics. As of recording, I'm waiting for a bunch of Hardocs to show up for a new Beetle, and I may have started Napalm 3 and got a drum motor and drum on its way, because featherweights are a normal thing. And the Napalm mine needed a drum spinner, of course.
And you can find my personal things at Team Martin Bailey on Facebook. I am working on a Beetle 4-bar. And you can find ESC on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. Go check that out. We do stuff related to the show. Posts, updates.
I post ESC stuff on Twitter as well, but I never got to say my Twitter because you interrupted me, bitch.
All right, I'm sorry. Consider that my apology. ESC on Facebook, Rare is ESC on Twitter, ESC on Spotify, ESC on YouTube. Go follow, go subscribe to all of that wonderful stuff for more content. Because, yeah, if you're new around here, if you just tuned in for the Chris Rose interview, we've got a whole backlog of podcast stuff. Rare, Mitch, and I, we've got, at the time of recording, a good 14 or so episodes of podcasts that we've been doing over the past year, various different guests from all over the community. And if you've not listened to those, go check them out. We cannot recommend them highly enough.
And also other stuff.
Other stuff?
I don't know. I thought I'd just scare you. Also, I've just thrown my drink everywhere, so I'm a bit.
You're doing. It's a RoboNerd special. Yeah, there's got to be drink thrown everywhere at least.
Oh God,
once.
yeah. Keep it in. Keep this in. I'm currently covered in fruit juice ice. It's not quite Mountain Dew, but you know, it's.
Mike would approve. Mike would approve. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed the interview and enjoy the rest of the RoboNerd celebrations.
Yep.
Happy RoboNerd to you.
Happy RoboNerd, and everyone in the comments, tell Oliver that he can start growing a beard. Thank you.
Tell Oliver to be more than 12 years old as of next recording.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
ESC is brought to you by Dickhead Generals, Gazebos, Garden Supplies. Get your gazebos, don't look at the change.
You're all fired.